Hello and welcome to the first episode of the Male Fertility Workshop. My name's Marcus and I will be your host. Very much looking forward to speaking with you. Just a brief introduction to the episode, which is that we will be looking at how we've always known how to boost men's fertility. And we're going to go back and look at some studies in the past, look at some well-documented facts about how we've always, as I said, known how to help men become more fertile. But as we're on the first episode, I will introduce myself. My name's Marcus. I'm founder of the Fertility Project, and this Male Fertility Workshop podcast is, of course, an offshoot of that. And just a little bit of background, a little bit of history about myself. I have gone through a 4-year IVF journey with my wife. We've had plenty of ups and downs with that journey. And throughout that time, I have had to improve my sperm naturally. And essentially, I want to share that information with you because you don't have to feel like your fertility is static. You don't have to feel like it's something that you're lumped with. It is something that can be built upon and you can improve. So I wanted to share that information with everybody out there. And I thought, what better place to start than acknowledging that we've always known how to improve our fertility. Modern day science, typically, if you're within any kind of healthcare system, such as the NHS in the UK, if you're in the US, anywhere like that, they'll often, once they see a poor sperm result on a sperm analysis, they'll just throw you towards fertility treatment / IVF. Whereas you don't need to do that. You can simply improve your sperm health naturally. And that's what I have done, and done it in a big way. So I want all of that for the rest of you as well, so that you can avoid all the stress, cost, everything with IVF, as we'd all want to avoid it if we could, guys, right? So let's just leave it at that. So let's crack on.
A quick note before we continue. This episode is sponsored by the Supplement Blueprints, a free training we created for men who want to improve sperm health and stop guessing with supplements. We break down what works and what actually matters for male fertility, forms, dosages, timing, and the label tricks most brands use to look premium while under-delivering. If you want to join the free session, just go to thefertilityproject.life/blueprints. That's thefertilityproject.life/blueprints.
So a lot of ancient cultures believed, based upon observation and trial and error, that there was a number of different things that could be done to improve male fertility. And we're going to start with Greece. So the Greeks, as we know, very advanced civilization for their era, birthplace of democracy, etc., etc. They were ones where science is spawned from that culture. And there was very much a belief that the father transmitted strength and character and vitality from father to son. And the idea of strong body, strong mind would equal strong seed. So that was their ethos. And they did a number of things that that are quite predictable, if I'm being honest with you. We can go through the big ones, diet. So looking at what they ate, they loved their olive oil, which was healthy in fats, helped circulation. They loved their cold water fish. That would be something they would focus on during a time of preparation leading up to conceiving. Not just, oh, it's time, I want to have a baby now, but it would actually be seen as a journey leading up to the time that they'd want to conceive. So that could be prior to marriage, or it could be after. So cold water fish was often prioritized. They'd have omega-3s in them, extremely important. Everyone supplements for it, but you can just have a healthy diet with fish as well. They'd have figs and honey, lots of minerals, antioxidants, have dairy, protein, fats, garlic, leeks, help the blood flow, all that kind of stuff. So their exercise regime was quite unique. I have just full transparency, guys, I have a big list in front of me with everything they have. But although exercise is something that was the cornerstone of a lot of ancient civilizations' kind of preparation protocol for fertility, the Greeks really did it in a big way. So they would often look to wrestling, running, athletics. It's the foundation of Olympians there. They'd also have ancient fighting practices such as pancration, which was kind of like ancient MMA. And they were very much switched on into the fact that, you wouldn't want to overtrain. You would want to ensure that you were training rigorously, but you wouldn't want to overdo it, because they had observed that wasn't good for the body, that amount of exertion and stress. There was also this idea of sexual moderation, that essentially a man would not have a lot of sex. It would be, which is really interesting because we know that different ejaculation protocols can influence how healthy your sperm will be when it comes to the time of either submitting a sample or when it comes to conceiving and having sex with your wife's or partner's ovulation period. So that is it's a really interesting takeaway. So they would ensure that essentially a man would not be having too much sex. They wouldn't say it wouldn't be a celibacy period. Other kingdoms, civilizations had that, and there's again an interesting take on all the different angles. But with the Greeks, they had simply ensured that there wasn't sex was in moderation. And an interesting quote from Aristotle, which is, "A man's seed is a residue of nourishment," which basically you are what you eat. That's basically what it comes back to. So again, very intelligent and ancient civilization had observed these facts. And we'll just jog across the continent a little bit to ancient Rome. Now, ancient Rome, of course, I mean, they took so much from the Greeks. They are kind of like the Greeks. I mean, I don't know if that's controversial to say, but they were kind of like the evolution of the Greeks, really. And they also had, when it came to preparing for fertility, they also had diets and foods that they would look to increase fertility, such as dates and figs, which contain a whole load of antioxidants, which a lot of you will supplement for. They had fenugreek and tribulus used. Again, really interesting because fenugreek you can use to help boost your testosterone, which of course, and it will influence the rest of your hormones, so your 3T, your LH, and the full panel. And hormonal health influences your fertility so much. There's more to it than just your hormones, of course, but your hormonal health really, really, really important. And the fact that they were using fenugreek and other herbs and using other nutritional sources to improve that doesn't surprise me. And I think they were, I don't know if they were one of the ones or the ones that discovered oysters, but I mean personally that doesn't do anything for me. But apparently, I heard stories that it does help a lot of other guys. I heard it firsthand from a few people. So that's again something that they were very much into. And the oysters, the whole idea is that helps blood flow, etc. So that's kind of like one of the things about aphrodisiacs is that they would stimulate blood flow, which would then help with men's erections. So that's again something to bear in mind. If you want to improve fertility, look at blood flow.
A quick reminder, if supplements still feel confusing or you're not sure what actually matters, the free supplement blueprint walks you through it step by step. It helps you understand what works, what doesn't, and where to focus so you're not wasting time or money. You'll find it at thefertilityproject.life/blueprints.
But without any further ado, we'll go on to the next one, big one, Ayurveda. So Ayurveda is Indian traditional medicine, between 3,000 to 5,000 years old. There's no real confirmed date, but it's it's very old by all accounts. And it was interesting because they actually had an offshoot of Ayurveda that would specifically look at male fertility, and they would break down the final tissue sample, the semen. They would look at digestion and how that would interact with seed, the weak sperm, and then they would also look at the science of virility. So really interesting that they took the time to sort of really dissect all of that. So again, when it comes to diet, they're looking at ghee, they're looking at milk, they're looking at nuts and seeds. Nuts and seeds are going to come up very often, guys. The idea that these nuts and seeds affect the body is based in fact because they hold a lot of vitamins and minerals. Again, when we look at dates and figs, that's what the Ayurveda practice would encourage to be eaten in order to prepare the body for male fertility. A lot of this stuff is going to be very much in common with other civilizations. But these guys, do you remember how with the Greeks it was there was like this sex in moderation? This kind of, it would be basically an ejaculation protocol, which is what is being studied now. For the Ayurveda, they would do abstinence periods, and the abstinence periods would vary. It's hard to get hard data on that, but it would be for a significant amount of time. They would also look at yoga and breath work as well, meditation. That is obviously something that's very rooted in Indian culture. And again, an interesting thing to practice. Why? Because we know that through oxygen therapy and a whole variety of other areas, that the oxygen levels within our body will contribute towards our overall health and, of course, our fertility as well. So the fact that they were looking at that or had identified it as part of fertility back then really speaks to how arrogant we are kind of now in terms of thinking that we know so much about fertility, when actually there's so many gaps left. So again, another ancient civilization, we're going to look at traditional Chinese medicine and Taoism. So a quick summary of how that worked. Chinese medicine really looks at something called Jing, and Jing is the kind of reproductive essence of a man. And a big focus is put on the kidney health as well. But the idea was to preserve the Jing within the body. And in response to that, they would essentially use celibacy as well. The Chinese, from the information that I've gathered, would tend to do that for over long periods of time, which, no one jumped the gun and do that, because that, through research, has been disproven it helps in some ways and it damages in others. Because if you don't ejaculate, then you will have a lot of dead sperm, debris, etc., in your semen. So you don't want to go too overboard with celibacy or not ejaculating enough. But that was something that they had obviously identified, because if you do become celibate for a long period of time, you do end up with a larger sample, a larger amount of semen. So again, that's the observations that they had made. And they were kind of one of the ones that first looked at pelvic floor control, which it's really interesting. So this is like completely different to Kegel exercises, right? So they both look at increasing the control and strength of the pelvic floor, but they're two different things. Kegel logic didn't come from traditional Chinese medicine. So the fact that they were looking at that back then is, again, pretty amazing. And that really speaks to how much they focused on ejaculation regulation. And they often used herbs, foods, again, to stimulate and to increase biological function as well. So you have goji berries. There's plenty of superfoods that come from Chinese traditional medicine. And typically they would kind of prioritize a diet of like lamb and bone broth, meat and bone broth, which would have minerals and protein. They have walnuts as well. Walnuts comes up a lot actually in these ancient civilizations. Black sesame, eggs and seaweed. So seaweed has loads of iodine, which is really great for the body. And walnuts have loads of zinc and they have fats as well. So again, all this nutrition is really, again, supporting. We know that it supports biological function. We know that it supports fertility. A quote from a renowned medical practitioner is Sun Simiao, which is, if a man wastes his essence, he diminishes his life. So that really shows that this kind of like energy represented by Jing, it really shows that they thought that the more men were having sex, the more that they would diminish their Jing levels and their virility, their vitality, and their life force. So really interesting concept. Now let's hop over the globe to East Africa. The Maasai. I actually met some Maasai people in Tanzania. They operate around Kenya, Tanzania, that region. And they're not like a alpha culture. They definitely have masculine traits, but they're very slim and they're built for endurance. So it was interesting meeting them back then. I actually tried to get a photo of their cows and all of them moving through, and then one came up and started asking me for money for the privilege of taking a photo of them, which as an 18-year-old, I said, that's ridiculous. I'm not paying it. And then he kind of shouted something at me and then walked off, which, fair enough. Who likes to be having photos taken of? Well, back then it was a thing. Now it's just, I don't know, it's a public right in the UK at least. Anyway, so sorry for that tangent. So again, the Maasai people, they have a very interesting diet. So they live off the milk of the cows, and then they also have the blood that they would kind of drain out of their cows and then mix it with the milk, and they would drink that. And they would, of course, eat meat when appropriate, because their cows are their livelihood. They didn't eat meat all the time, just when appropriate, such as some kind of event would happen, whereby they would slaughter a cow or there would be a dying cow, etc. So again, a very high protein and fatty diet. And they actually have this, I mean, physical endurance, as I said before, is what they prioritized. And they actually have like another exercise that they do, just as a side, as a side tidbit of information, which is called the adumu. And it's this jumping dance that they would participate in. And again, it's this explosive jumping dancing that they would do that again exercises the body. And it kind of like displays stamina, strength, and kind of, yeah, explosive power. And yeah, that's something again that they would partake in. Again, this kind of strength building exercise. We know that if you do explosive training, if you do weight training, that it will improve your testosterone and then in turn improve your fertility. So the fact that these cultures have little kind of, well, not little, but they focus on these timeless truths is again very insightful. And I'm kind of going through all these cultures because I want people to know that no matter where they are in the world, that their forefathers, they knew better. And it's important to look back to the past in the context of male fertility, not just because we take comfort from the fact that we've always known how to do it and we can still do it today. Of course, that's a massive point. But also, there is a lot of science about the diminishment of male fertility over the last 100 years. Massive studies that over the last 40 years alone, I think motility, morphology, and sperm count have all decreased by about 40%. And the time period before that, 40% was also lost. So you know that your father at the same age as you are now was more fertile, and that his grandfather, your grandfather, your father's father was more fertile than your father at the same age. So it really is, this link to the past is something very strong. And again, that'll be things that we'll be exploring more and more.
Quick pause before we continue. This episode is also supported by a free session we're running called Sperm Analysis Mastery: How to Read Your Results Properly. In this session, I walk you through my own semen analysis reports, the real numbers, real changes, and explain what each marker actually means: the volume, concentration, motility, morphology, liquefaction, and what clinics often don't explain. Most men are told they're normal or borderline without ever being taught how to interpret the report, how to track improvement over time, or what the numbers actually mean. If you want to understand your results instead of guessing, you can join the free session at thefertilityproject.life/free resources. That's thefertilityproject.life/free resources.
Now, we're going to move from Africa, go back to Asia, Mongols. The Mongols, a nomadic warrior culture. So fertility was highly valued there because you had a family, you'd have a yurt or a couple of tents to basically house your family. And the size of your family would influence the standing of your family, the standing of your clan, and of course, just basic survival needs. So if you had 5 sons and a couple of daughters, that was kind of the standard back then. If you couldn't have offspring, you're going to be in big trouble because the sons would help out with hunting, gathering, whatever it would be. And the daughters, honestly, typically they're just sold off. I mean, let's not beat around the bush. A lot of them were just used as a way to create ties with other clans, etc. So again, the Mongols, they prioritized their fertility tremendously. And again, they were like the Maasai, which is that they would prioritize their horses. Their horses were their livelihood. So they would eat their horses and they would take care of them, but they would eat them as well. And they would also have bone broths. We've mentioned those before. And they would also have something called a rag. And it's interesting because a lot of cultures, I didn't mention this before, they avoided alcohol. Like the Greeks and the Romans for fertility, they would actually reduce their wine intake because they knew that it wasn't good for fertility, which is a tremendously important observation because alcohol is hugely detrimental to fertility. You know, people can argue, well, you can get drunk and then have sex, and that will create, that will help. But at the same time, when it comes to men who are past the 35 mark, such as myself, they will see that will have a much stronger effect than if they stop drinking. It will have a much stronger effect than if they kept drinking. So the reason why I bring that up is because the Mongols used to drink fermented mare's milk. Fermented mare's milk was 1 to 3% alcoholic, which is a very low amount. And by all accounts, guys, it also tastes absolutely horrible. But, sorry if there's any how do you say that, Mongolese listening in. But that's what I've heard. But the mare's milk, again, that would have a lot of probiotics. A lot of good stuff comes from fermented foods. There was that. And then we'll look at the Americas, Native Americans. they had a lot of traditions such as fasting and prayer. And this is a really interesting point as well, because we know that fasting improves health a lot. I myself, I haven't gone through a really serious look at and implementing fasting in order to boost my sperm. There's been a great many things that I've done to go through trials and errors to improve my sperm, but fasting is not one of them. So again, that is something that they had identified can help the body, and they would use prayer as well. They also had a big ethos on emotional discipline. And I think that is a massive plus because it is something that helps regulate stress. And stress, again, is a big factor that can influence all us men, our sperm. So really powerful stuff, really powerful stuff. And I just as a kind of a side note, I saw a massive improvement of my sperm count once I had dealt with stress. So that is like, for me, like I see that, I've researched that and I've read up about it, straight away, I know that, from my first-hand experience, that if you do that, if you listeners do that, then you're going to have big impact already. Emotional discipline. And then you've got sweat lodges. Now, this is really interesting. Sweat lodges are, because typically, like I know that if you overheat your testes, your sperm are going to feel it. It's going to be a massive negative. But here they use them. And as I was looking into things, the reasons that, it could be a good thing is because it helps detoxify the body. That's the whole point in going to the steam room, sauna, is to detoxify the body. And it's actually very good for you, like extremely good for you. And it's great for your blood circulation as well. So there's those bonuses to it. And it's definitely good for longevity. But fertility, it is not. But the sweat lodges, what they would do is they wouldn't do it as a continuous practice. It would just be a one-off. So it was an interesting way to purify yourself before heading into improving preparing your body to be fertile. So that's, again, these ancient cultures, they knew stuff. They knew stuff. And any doctor who you meet for the IVF, for IVF or anything like that, they will not acknowledge anything. It is a hard sell out there to be like, I mean, first of all, if you even ask them, look, how can I help my body become more fertile? The answer they'll give you is, you can do exercise, and eat well, and that can help support fertility. But here, in this, we do the bulk of the work, which is simply not true. Like it's simply not true in the context of improving your sperm, right, or having healthy sperm. It's not the case, and it's a system that is there to, of course, help you, but of course, they're within a system that's there to make money. Like, let's be honest, right? So they give advice based upon their education, which, of course, it's all, a capitalist kind of flow of systems. And I'm not someone who's like against, capitalism, etc. That's not why I bring it to the forefront of what I'm saying now. I'm just saying that they will prioritize the income of money as a system. But again, I'm not going to go too much down the rabbit hole right now. So let's get back to it. So Native Americans' diets, right? Again, they were eating bison, meat, fish. They were eating berries, beans, corn, squash, all this stuff. Very much something. All these things would have antioxidants, vitamins, of course. A lot of would support, lots of protein and support and building of amino acids. So again, really important stuff. We do have the Maya Aztec stuff, but to be honest with you, they were a little bit crazy. I don't know if I really want to go into all the stuff they did, but they did have amazing beans-based diet, which had lots of proteins and lots of good stuff in there. And they did use cacao to help circulation. So that is a big takeaway from them. Ancient Egypt, yeah, this is an interesting few tips we can take from them. So again, they were kind of similar to the Greeks in that they identified that the seed of a man was kind of like his essence. Again, the Chinese identified that. Many of the cultures did. And they would actually utilize diet and herb quite a lot. So again, dates and figs, very, very common in that region. Honey, dairy, they were using fenugreek to boost, knowingly or not, the testosterone and the hormonal regulation of the male body. And they would use garlic and mandrake again to help blood flow and things like that. Interesting point about the Egyptians, though, just as a fun fact that I'm going to do one of these, I know it's corny, a fun fact every episode, which is that they believed that you could use crocodile dung as a method of conception. Sorry, no, not conception, contraception. I completely misspoke. So that's that kind of like fun fact, and it's a bit weird, right? Using crocodile dung specifically for contraception. And maybe there's a few people out there who are just kind of like stroking their beards and they're like, interesting. Please tell me more. And I can. What they used to do is with that dung, they used to essentially force that up their wives' vaginas. And I think to myself, yeah, that'll do it. And a few of you are telling off the idea now. Well, I hope more than a few. Just thinking to yourself, yeah, I had sex with my wife, her vagina, so I will not be doing that because I love her and the smell would be horrendous and I don't want that on my dick. So fair enough to you. And if anyone else out there is still stroking their beard and thinking, I lost my sense of smell a while ago, perhaps it is an option. Those people need help. So we'll move on from that and we will carry on.
To be clear, if you've had a semen analysis and weren't really shown how to read it, the free sperm analysis mastery session walks you through it step by step. It helps you understand what the numbers actually mean and how to track your improvement. You'll find it at thefertilityproject.life/free resources.
Now let's get back to the Middle East. So this is pre-Islamic period. So you're looking at Arabia, you're looking at Persia, Mesopotamia, that entire kind of area. And again, male fertility, very important. They would have camel milk, dates, honey, meat. We're looking at all the same stuff that will include minerals, zinc, iron. Zinc, very important. And then they'll use herbs, fenugreek, etc. And the list goes on and on. Because in Japan, you have, again, identifying that seaweed. You've got fish, omega-3s for fish. Seaweed's got iodine, very important. You can supplement for that as well. Vegetables, which will have all the minerals and and I think Japan is quite unique in identifying that vegetables being a significant part of fertility, because that's where you get the bulk of your vitamins. That's where you get the bulk of your minerals, which isn't to say that, there's a reason why a lot of cultures looked at like the Mongolians, Sai, they were looking at red meat and dairy products, eggs, milk, etc. Those proteins are definitely needed, but Japan were definitely the one and only ones that I can see from all my research that really relied upon vegetables in a massive way. The Native Americans did as well, squash, corn, etc., but not like the Japanese. And just looking at the aphrodisiacs that we mentioned before, so the aphrodisiacs actually, they do support blood flow, which is majorly important, because if you're getting healthy nutrition but your blood flow is poor, then the nutrients aren't going to be distributed around your body. And of course, in the context of what we're talking about, male fertility, it's not going to get to the testicles. So blood flow is hugely important. That's one of the big things from aphrodisiacs that people don't take into account, is that, yeah, it is important. If you do consistently take them, then not only is it going to supposedly help your libido, which I think it would, because that's what blood flow is all about in the context of fertility, and what you see, the results you see, is that you're meant to get stronger erections and many more of them. But the blood flow distributes nutrients to your testicles so they can produce quality sperm. That's, again, really important, something that's coupled with, not necessarily observed, but that's a byproduct of it. Again, looking at these cultures, if we're going to look at commonalities, there's fenugreek and a whole range of other herbs that are used in order to regulate hormones. You also have ashwagandha, which is often used, again, people supplement for that in order to help boost their testosterone and also to balance out other things. You've got other hormones. You've got tribulus, again, very important. Maca roots, which has come up. So there's a lot of these herbs that are used within the aphrodisiacs to therefore help fertility. Now, just going to go over the time of preparation. So all these cultures, how long did they take? How long was this preparation period for? Well, it does vary, unsurprisingly. So you've got weeks, months that they might do their preparations for. We know now that 3 months is the minimum time period whereby you can really see a strong result in the change of your sperm. You can transform the health of your sperm within 3 months. That's because it basically takes about 3 months, approximately 3 months, for your sperm to grow from the very beginning to the end of fully mature sperm. So that's why you have a cyclical methodology, and that's indeed what we use in order to track results and boost your sperm. So again, they would be using spans of weeks and months, which would that would aid their sperm improvement, aid in boosting their fertility. So what does modern science confirm? So basically, it confirms that nutrition does affect your sperm's DNA. It affects the count. It affects the semen that is held within. It affects the morphology, motility, all those, the big three, the big highlights, but also so much more. How fast the liquefaction time, the pH level, that there's a whole range of things that can be optimized. And you can do that through diet. We also know that there's implications when it comes to epigenetics. So that is the study of our DNA. Like, we can influence what DNA sequences come online or offline throughout our time span. That's what epigenetics is all. In layman's terms, that's essentially what it is. So we know that stress can do that. Stress can also damage sperm, specifically oxidative stress. So we know that can be an influence, and that has been identified. And then you've also got the idea of exercise. And there's also a big spiritual component, which I didn't really go into because our podcast doesn't really focus on that. But the fact that these cultures were, perhaps pagan is the right word, but they really have a plethora of different gods. And within that, they will have gods that represent fertility, harvest, etc. And they would be focused and praying towards that one goal and align themselves with it. And there is something to be said about that. I'm not going to go into it too much, but there very much is an emotional component to all of this as well.
Hey man, I know why you're listening to this channel, and my guess is you're looking for a clear path forward. Just want to briefly mention something we've built for men who want more clarity, structure, and control over their fertility. It's a course called Male Fertility Mastery. It's grounded in evidence-based fertility research and what I've applied and refined over more than 4 years navigating my own fertility journey. Not theory, but my own lived experience. It hasn't just worked for me, it's helped a lot of other men improve their sperm health too. This course shows you how to meaningfully improve sperm health over a 3-month period. It's built around how sperm actually change and organizes what matters into clear, practical steps you can follow to transform your own fertility. We focus on understanding your sperm markers, improving them through evidence-based habits, and removing the guesswork so you're not, say, jumping from supplement to supplement. The goal isn't more information. It's a clear plan you can actually follow. The first module is available to explore so you can see how it's structured before committing, and it comes with a 100% no-hassle money-back guarantee, so there's no pressure to continue if you're dissatisfied in any way. If you want to take a proper look, you can find it at thefertilityproject.life/MFM course. That's thefertilityproject.life/MFM course.
So really, kind of like the conclusion of all this is that we've always known how to improve male fertility. It's just that we didn't have microscopes back then. We couldn't track things. We had to go through years, generations upon generations of observations to see what worked and what didn't. And it's a real kind of shame that we've kind of thrown that all to the wind when, if you think about the sheer amount of effort and patience and the amount of time that spans, the time of study, all of that away, it seems almost disrespectful. It seems crazy to do that. So for anyone listening who doesn't have the fertility where they want it to be, think about the fact that they used to boost sperm in the past, and the fact that we have so much science data out there now that can help you do that. So if any of you are under the illusion that you're kind of lumped into where you are, don't listen to that. And if your doctor's telling you to go straight to IVF, just tell them to hold their horses, all right? Tell them to hold up, Make sure that you look at alternative sources of information. Of course, fact check what I've said today. Always fact check, but always look for alternative sources. Don't ever trust one doctor. You can have various, I wish we had done it back in the day. We had spoken to a variety of different doctors to get different opinions, second, third opinions, because that would have really shaped our journey a lot more differently rather than just, getting on the conveyor belt of fertility and having to just trust that everything's going to be okay. There is a lot more that you can do. And of course, that's what we'll be addressing in a lot of other episodes as well. So if you want to start making changes, what I would encourage you is to use this as an excuse just to sort of research and go like, well, what can help me? We've already spoken about the variety of different herbs and things that can help balance out and improve your hormone results already. We've spoken about what nutrients are good for your body in the context of fertility. We're looking at vitamins, minerals, proteins. And of course, by the way, there of course was no processed. There was bread back then, like there was grain, but there wasn't what we're eating today, which is against if you're eating bread, it's just like fluff in your mouth. It holds no nutritional value. So I mean, just think about it. It's just made with flour, some yeast, some salt, some sugar. That's bread. Like when you eat that, you're eating just nothing. So I'll just put my crusade against bread to one side. And it's not even as if I don't like bread. I mean, I like good bread. It's fantastic, but it's not something that you should be prioritizing every meal. Let's just put it that way. So we know that these again, we know that fermented foods are really good. We know that probiotics are good. We know that not having too much alcohol is good. And by the way, drugs weren't exactly the go-to thing back then for extracurricular stuff as well. So I'm just going to throw that out there. Smoking isn't and drugs aren't good for you. I mentioned drugs. I just talk about medication. Medication can have side effects. Doctors often don't think about it because they're idiots. No, it's not because they're idiots, guys. It's because they're looking at one problem at a time. That's why. And they neglect other areas of bodies to prioritize the solving of one problem. So, yeah, I'm not a doctor, or a healthcare professional. So I sometimes take a stab at them because I have anger, if I'm being honest with you, leveled towards them because of how I feel that they've shaped our fertility journey when it didn't need to be like that in the first place. But upon that merry point, I am just going to end things here. Again, take action, guys. Look to what you can do. Look to how you can help yourself broaden your mind, open your mind to the idea that your sperm don't always have to be what the result is today. In up to 3 months' time, they can be transformed into something much healthier. And we've explored a few of those ideas. And you can Google around, ChatGPT, and look into perhaps even speak to other doctors in order to get yourself into a better spot. Or alternatively, you can listen to our next episode, and I'll see you there. Thanks very much for listening.